This year, you stood with Detroit Public Radio, supporting free speech and independent media when it mattered most. WDET is grateful for our members who make this service to our community possible. If you've donated recently, thank you. If you've never given, your first gift today helps us reach our goal of 250 new members by December 8th. Your support keeps bias-free news, essential music, and vital conversations flowing. Join us at WDET.org/give. Thank you.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Tia Graham. Nearly 7 million people in the U.S. are living with Alzheimer's disease. That number is only expected to grow in the coming decades. Researchers are slowly learning new information about the disease that could help doctors identify and treat it. But what is Alzheimer's exactly? And how do genetic and lifestyle factors contribute to the disease's presence? Joining me now to discuss all of this is Dr. Rainey Aburashed. He is a neurologist and the CEO of the biotech company Neurogen Biomarking. Dr. Rainey, thank you for joining us on the Metro.
Thanks for having me, Tia.
Of course. So what exactly is Alzheimer's disease?
So Alzheimer's disease, I think most people can understand that it's a disease of memory. And commonly we think of it as, oh, they're getting older and they have dementia or they have Alzheimer's disease. But the actual disease itself is unique in the fact that it actually begins decades before we see that decline. So I think when people think of the disease, they think it's inevitable, but it truly is not. So what's happening in the brain with Alzheimer's disease is it starts with the accumulation of plaques called amyloid plaques. You start that probably 10 to 15 to 20 years before the symptoms get significant. As those plaques are developed, you then develop something called neurofibrillary tangles, which are kind of a reaction to those plaques, and then you get inflammation in the background. All of that over time ends up, for lack of a better term, breaking down the car. And so the technology of what we've been able to learn over the last, 50 years is incredible. And so now our view of Alzheimer's now is very, very different than it was, years ago.
Yeah, and speaking of that, what is some of the most common misconceptions that people have about Alzheimer's?
Yeah, so I think many people think you can't do anything about it, which is inaccurate completely. And many people think that, if I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it, and so on and so forth. There's actually quite a bit of action that you can take. And really, the whole game now is determining as early as possible if you have these plaques developing in the brain. The earlier we know, before the symptoms are significant, the more we can interact and change the actual disease itself. So oftentimes people say, oh, I have a genetic risk of Alzheimer's. Let's talk about that for a second, because I think there's misconceptions about that. So yes, there are very rare types of genetic mutations that guarantee you're going to get Alzheimer's. But many other people just have genetic predispositions. And if those think of it as a loaded gun. You have a genetic profile, that's the loaded gun. But the actual pulling of the trigger is your lifestyle and what you do in your 40s, 50s, 60s. So, I encourage everybody, and that's really why we built the company, was we knew that there was a gap that 92% of the cases in the United States were being seen by neurologists too late for us to do anything. So what we did is we sort of flipped the entire paradigm and now give people, democratized access across the world, whether it's rural America, inner city America. We made it as cheap as possible to get screened, and then we built a system around it to not just leave you floating in the wind. So we take people in at the earliest worry, and we guide them step by step all the way through to where they need to be. And so it's been pretty remarkable to watch, some of the lives that we've touched doing this.
And I'm thinking about, just you talked about just kind of being, your body already has the, it's already built in to have these mechanisms, I guess you can say, that would lead you to have Alzheimer's later on in life. And I think about, like, for example, maybe you already are, you build up plaque more than other people may build up plaques. And that's one of the things that you're talking about right now. Can you just talk to me a little bit more about the genetic component to it?
Sure.
Because I know a lot of times people may hear that or even get word that they have the genetic component of it and they automatically shut down. So, like, how do you talk folks through this, especially at the genetic markers?
Yeah, so I think it's such an important question, because the first thing that I'd say to the audience, and I've treated thousands of patients in my life, is it's better to know what the road looks like as much as we can than to be caught blindsided. So a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to know. And I think I hear that from people. And my response is, it's much better to find a cancer at stage 1 where we can change something than to find it at stage 4 when we say, sorry, it's too late, right? So the goal is preservation of quality of life. And so the more information you have, especially with our new science, for example, what we do at Neurogen, it's incredible. We're able to look under the hood very, very early. We're able to at least get a signal that, hey, there's something to be concerned about here. And then we can guide you to inflict the changes necessary to potentially stop this or slow it significantly and truly change, the next 10 to 15 years of your life and your family's life. So never be scared to know information, number one. I'll start with that. In terms of genetics themselves, so, Alzheimer's, as I mentioned earlier, Alzheimer's, just because you have a family history does not mean you're going to get it, number one. Does it increase your predisposition to it? Yes, it does. And so I think we monitor that very carefully, and we want to know, does your mom, does your dad, your grandma, do they have the disease? But just because you have a genetic predisposition, again, does not mean you're going to progress to dementia. It doesn't mean you're going to get to the point where you no longer can think or no longer recognize your daughter or your son. But we can only change that if we are in front of it. And so that's sort of, we're pounding the pavement, letting people in the world know, and this is a global movement that we have going on with Neurogen. It's you need to know it before it shows significantly. Let us help you. Because some of these changes are pretty easy to do and pretty profound, the effects that they have on the disease.
So what changes are we actually talking about right now? What can people do if they have the genetic marker you're talking about? Yeah.
So for us, so you mentioned genetic marker, and I want to clarify something.
Yeah.
What we test at Neurogen is actually a biological marker. So it's not a genetic marker. We actually can now, with our newest technology, grab a drop of blood or a few drops of blood, but we grab some blood, and from that blood, we can determine a protein called phosphorylated tau 217. That protein, if it's elevated in the blood, suggests that there are those changes happening in the brain now. And it's pretty darn good. It's almost 96% accurate. So we know with that protein elevated that the changes are occurring. So immediately the call to action at that point is, all right, now we need to stop everything that is increasing this plaque buildup, right? We're going to slow this down as much as we humanly can. And there's ways you do that. One of them is lifestyle, which is massive. So this isn't like a foo-foo thing where it's, just go for a walk. This is much bigger than that. This is, if you're drinking, cutting down or stopping the drinking will have a significant effect on it. If you smoke, cutting down your smoking or stopping your smoking will have a significant effect on your brain. If you have high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, if we control those things, we slow it down significantly. If you exercise, it slows it down. If we get you into social interaction programs where you're talking to people, slows it down. And then on top of that, now we do have 2 FDA-approved treatments that slow it down as well. Now, these drugs are unique in the way that they work, and they're revolutionary, honestly. The first one came out in 23, the second one in 24. The problem with these drugs is they're only approved to be used if we catch it early. So right now, only 6% of the people in the country are being caught in time. And so with Neurogen, when we built the system, the idea here was, and that was one of the things that we watched very early on is, when we were in beta testing and looking at all of our population, was how many of these people are now eligible for the treatments. And it was remarkable what we saw. Because for us, of 180 positive patients, for example, almost 80% of them were caught in time where the treatments could actually be used on them.
That's amazing.
So that just didn't exist in the country. And so it's been incredible to watch. But I urge people, don't be scared of this disease. What you should be scared of, honestly, is what happens if it's too late. And so, my opinion of this is get ahead of this. It's equivalent to you driving to the airport later. You're gonna jump on Google Maps and look at the traffic, and you're gonna know how long it's gonna take because that helps you plan ahead. This is exactly the same thing when it comes to Alzheimer's.
So the new technology that you've been able to develop, especially just taking drops of blood, what were the tests before this?
Yep. So it's a great question. So prior to blood biomarkers, which is a field that we're in, we relied on something called PET scans, or positive emission tomography, and then MRIs, and then more or less clinical evaluation. So more or less talking to the neurologist. Incredibly, 25% of cases diagnosed by a neurologist were wrong. So it was really difficult to get to this diagnosis accurately for a long time because there was so much subjectivity to it. It was like, I think it's probably, but there's other types of dementia, there's other factors that go into it. So, now we're getting into true precision medicine where we're looking at just you, just your mom, just your dad. We're looking at them individually. We have people who are trained in it that sort of bring all the information together, including where they are in their memory testing, put all those pieces together, confirm the diagnosis accurately at a time that's 5 to 7 years before they ever would have thought about this. Those 5 to 7 years are the most critical years of the Alzheimer's spectrum for these patients.
And what are, some people might be wondering for themselves or for their loved ones right now, what are some everyday indicators that people should know about and that would tell them they should talk to a primary care doctor or a neurologist? I'm thinking about, it's the same question of how early on in age should people be getting tested as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. So people often ask me what's normal aging and what's an Alzheimer's sign, right? That's one of the most common questions people have. And so what I would say is this: it's normal to occasionally forget where you put your keys. It's normal to occasionally, make minor mistakes. It's not normal for it to be repetitive. So consistent, a repetitive, departure from your normal is something that you should be aware of and not be scared of, and be able to grab first and say, okay, I'm a little concerned about this. Mm-hmm. I'm just not as sharp as I once was. It's taking me longer to do some tasks that I used to do very quickly. Those are things that we want to investigate if you were over the age of 50 or so. Okay. So that's number one. So over the age of 50 is where we recommend it. The second problem is, you mentioned primary care physicians and neurologists. Now, the reality is most people don't have access to those things. 34% of Americans have a primary care doctor. So this is not going to solve the problem. People don't want to pay the copays. People don't want to go in. There's a lot of factors to it. And that's one of the reasons that we built the company, to go directly to the patient. So, and we do it at home. So the idea for us was, instead of going out and getting this $5,000, $7,000 evaluation because you're concerned, could we get you evaluated with the highest level of scientific integrity to a point where we say, yes, there actually is a concern here and it needs to be dealt with. And that's sort of what we do. And about 80% of our people are negative. So those people just saved thousands of dollars to the system. They saved their time. They saved their energy. The 20% that need it, though, man, we're able to get them in quickly, get them to where they need to be. And we partner with, our Nerge and Diamond Network, which are neurologists around the country that we have vetted, that are the best at what they do when it comes to Alzheimer's. So that continuum and the ability to sort of handhold people and become a part of their family is how we built the company. And even, to each of us, on the executive team, when we sat down to build this company, we all had a personal reason why this mattered. And that you can feel that passion sort of drive into what we've done. It's moved us through every roadblock we've had, and it's been honestly a joy to watch it come together.
You're listening to The Metro. I'm Tia Graham. We're talking about Alzheimer's disease. November is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and recent research has found a biomarker that can help with early detection of the disease. My guest is Dr. Rainey Aburashed. He is a neurologist and the CEO of Neurogen Biomarking. So I do want to ask you about your personal reason, because that was one of the things. This is such a personal disease that impacts those in the family and everyone around them. So, what was your reasoning for dedicating your life to finding a solution?
Yeah, so it was for me, when I was practicing fully early in my career, there was one case that stuck out to me. And it was a very tragic case to me because it made me hate this disease in a way that I didn't hate other diseases, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And the reason it wasn't the science. It wasn't the science. It was actually a family that's a husband and wife had built over a lifetime with 4 siblings. Everyone was tight. Everyone was close. And that whole family disintegrated around a potential diagnosis of Alzheimer's. And it was financial. So there was, it was an emotional case for me because I watched, a 80-year-old woman who dedicated her life to building a family with her husband. And I watched as the children lost everything she had built around this diagnosis. So that was sort of, one to me that drove a lot of my view of there's got to be a better way to do this. And there's got to be a way that we can approach this in a way that preserves someone's life's work. So that was sort of, one of the big ones. And then the reality is for me, the universe built the company. So I in 2019, I was at an exhibit hall. I saw a little machine in the corner, and the person who was representing the machine told me that, hey, we can measure proteins down to 0.5 nanograms per deciliter, which is very microscopic. We could never do that before. And I immediately, in my mind at that time, knew that the future of brain was going to be in blood. So came back to the States. I was in Germany. Came back to the States, ordered the machine, had no money, put it in my lab, and it wasn't FDA approved. There was nothing. And we just started tackling it. We just started researching it and writing protocols and figuring out what was going on. And then you fast forward now, 9 years, and now this is validated, FDA approved, and it's pretty incredible. But we wanted to make it accessible. We didn't want this to be a rich person's test. We didn't want this to be siloed into people who have access to doctors. I know doctors. I can call someone tomorrow, God forbid, if I get sick. Mm-hmm. Most people in the country don't have that. And so we wanted to reach rural America. We wanted to reach inner city America. We wanted to reach really every demographic that we can, because everyone should have a right to health. Like everyone, in our opinion, those healthcare disparities are something that as a group we're not okay with.
And, thinking about the test that you were talking about previously and what we have now, how you just take a few drops of blood and now you can detect whatever you need to detect, the biomarkers, like you said, within the blood. It's less invasive. It is something that is easier done at home versus going into an office. So once again, you talked a little bit about how it's going to reach folks who are across the spectrum, no matter where they are. They're gonna be able to access this. Are they just calling? How are they getting access to it?
Yep. So you can go to our website, mybrainday.com, www.mybrainday.com. And I did ask the team to put a promo code for your listeners. It's WDET 15. So WDET 15, and you'll get a discount on that. And essentially, you order it. If you answer a few questions, our neurologists review and say, yes, you're a good candidate, or no, you're not. If you're a good candidate, the kit comes to your home. The blood is drawn. You're sitting at your house. You do an assessment online in your portal. We put those pieces of information together. Our neurologists then communicate to you. They walk you through what your results look like, what it means, what it doesn't mean. And then we take you wherever you are and get you wherever you need to be. And that's it's the starting point of any concern.
And before I do let you go, what's one of the number one lifestyle factors that people can change if they are concerned about a risk of Alzheimer's? Like if they have family members with the disease, what is some of the things that they can take home with them to do right now?
Yeah, so those of you who are interested in going to the Red Wing game tonight or the Lions game on Sunday, the two big ones, honestly, guys, are smoking and drinking. So smoking and drinking, I understand people enjoy that, but those are things that are not good for the brain in any way, shape, or form. And then the last one is, if you're going to do those things, you have to exercise. Blood flow to the brain is critical. So sedentary lifestyle really is really awful as well.
Dr. Rani Aburashed is a neurologist and CEO of Neurogen Biomarking. I want to say thank you so much for joining us and explaining Alzheimer's a little bit more for those who are interested in explaining the new developments in technology to detect Alzheimer's earlier. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Coming up, Detroit filmmakers will showcase their work at the Senate Theater this weekend. You all stay right there. We'll learn more.